Hey everyone, Brandon here with Minnesota Blockchain Initiative. This is the MN Blockchain Conversations podcast from the Quantum Lex Studio in Minneapolis. Well, we just had a big election, didn't we? And it's had an incredible impact already on cryptocurrency. So to discuss this, we invited in Jason Frye of Terrapin Strategies. Terrapin Strategies is a government relations consultancy. Jason travels all over the country working with entities seeking regulatory clarity and pathways for their business. And this includes businesses in the blockchain and cryptocurrency world. So we discussed this work. What exactly is this career like? Its reputation, working in government relations, its purpose, and then the perspective on the country it has given Jason. Well, speaking of perspectives on the country, we then, of course, discuss at length about the election and what its outcome has meant already and will continue to mean for our industry of blockchain, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and the like. Enjoy. Jason, how you doing, man?
Excellent. How are you?
Pretty crazy week, eh?
You know what? It feels like it, but it's actually like not quite as crazy as last time, right? It feels like surreal. I think. Did you say surreal earlier?
I did.
It feels surreal, like where it's like it's over and it's past. It's like it's behind us already. Where it felt like last time, it just went on forever.
Yeah, there was a lot more drama. And so that it was buttoned up so swiftly actually makes it weirder. Mm-hmm. Because you anticipated some drama.
Where are my hanging chads? Where are my mail-in ballots? Right, where's the ballot box stuffing? Where's the videos of people with suitcases full of ballots? Where is that? There's nothing like that. It's like no drama at all.
I also said it was going to feel weird no matter who won.
Right.
Because it would have broke the mold in a couple of ways.
Totally.
Either way.
It's either Back to the Future with Trump or, what does the future look like with Kamala? And, like what would that be? Is that a true continuation of what Biden has already done? Is there going to be some other flavor that she was going to bring in? But we're never going to know. And we're Back to the Future this time.
You were commenting on the California map.
I mean, there was a couple like really staggering images or infographics that I saw from the data. And the most stark is California, is when you see the Inland Empire go from blue in 2020 to all red down to Riverside County into Orange County.
What's Inland Empire?
So like San Bernardino, like the sort of the 15 corridor, there's sort of like a few highways that run through the middle of the state, and they call that the Inland Empire. So it's sort of like the coastal cities, the mountains, and then all the people that are on the inside of that, in between there and Death Valley, basically, and the Mojave Desert. They call that the Inland Empire.
And that's typically, at least in the last generation, been blue?
Yeah, well, it was very red for a long time. It switched to blue, and then this time it went back. It snapped back. This was a historically conservative area, and so like to see that happen. But what you saw in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and now Nevada, was you see this in 2008. How far Barack Obama moved the needle, right? I've been saying that this doesn't feel like 2016. This feels like 2008 to me, right? This feels like a replay of Obama coming in. The only thing that makes it different, right, is that Trump's a known commodity. He's been around. So, but it feels more like 2008 to me, where it really just shifts the polls so far. And it's going to take some people some time, right, to catch up. And because in 49 of 50 states, they moved to the right. 49 or 50.
You saw that map of the counties and the arrows?
Yes, when they all went one way and only two went the other.
90 some percent went to red, to the right.
Right. And basically Utah and I think there was one other jurisdiction, maybe DC, went to the left.
Colorado.
Yeah, well, I don't know about Colorado, because I think he tightened the margin overall statewide. But I don't know. You could be right on that. But for sure, Utah was the only state that moved definitively to the left, and it still was a overwhelming majority Republican.
Yeah,
win.
I noticed that state was still almost 2/3 Trump.
Yeah, it's I was just there. It's an incredible place. It's beautiful. It's it's beyond anything I ever expected. I never thought. I'd been through Utah as like a little kid. I had no idea how beautiful that place is. Those people are just like better at life than the average person is. It's amazing. And I didn't see a single Trump sign. I only saw Harris signs because the Trump supporters are just too damn polite to put the signs out. They don't want to offend anybody. So, but I think that
they're not driving around in monster trucks with big American flags.
No, they just have everything is perfect there. It's like it's.
What city?
Well, so I was in Salt Lake, Park City, and then kind of tooled around in like sort of the outskirts of Park City.
Okay.
And we went through like a neighborhood. We drove up. We did like off-roading, and we drove up like the side of a mountain on a off-road vehicle. It was pretty cool. And, drove through mountain streams and all that stuff. It was incredible. But the thing that we all noticed was just like how perfect everybody's stuff was. It was perfect. Like it looked like an amusement park. It didn't look like real life. Like everybody had, cute landscaping and pretty homes and, beautiful cars. And it was like, I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. So we'll give Utah, a little bit of grace on this one. But yeah, they were the only state in America that trended left in this election.
And
which
by
is just
grace,
really crazy.
you're joking, but you're also sort of showing your cards there, right?
Well, maybe a little bit, but some political grace for sure. But no, it's definitely a trend. A place that's trending blue or bluer, and where the state legislature remains really conservative, but the governor is, for all intents and purposes, a Democrat. And governs like one, talks like one, says kind of the right things, but he's sort of like a statewide office holder, where you can see, we're in this, like Ohio, for example, Mike DeWine in Ohio. Very, very moderate governor.
Yeah.
He does not run like Tim Walz does, right? He is a governor for everybody. And the people that hate him the most are the Republicans or the conservatives.
Even though he's a Republican.
Even though he's a Republican, they don't like him. And so you definitely see that dynamic in Utah, where there's this kind of very moderate governor who seems to not mind upsetting his base the conservative base, because that's not his political base. So it's a very interesting place and beautiful.
It's an interesting politics is the most interesting anthropology, isn't it? But that phenomenon of a state that tends one way but still voting in a way that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
Did I see the Massachusetts governor is Republican?
So he was, and then the new governor, she is a Democrat.
Okay.
So yeah, they had. Vermont has had a Republican governor. New Hampshire.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Does Vermont currently have a Republican governor?
Yes, they have. This.
Yeah. How the heck does that happen?
You need to. We should probably pull this up. We need to look at. So Vermont's. So it has Bernie Sanders, which won with like 65% of the vote.
Yeah.
The Republican governor wins with like 75% of the vote.
I saw that and I thought they were mistaken. I thought it was a typo on the TV or on the computer. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, no. And then the member of the House is a Democrat, if I recall. So you have a Republican, a Democrat, and an independent.
And Vermont
all
is
at once.
So.
Also another beautiful place.
Sure.
They drive really slow though. You got to be careful. They go like under the speed limit. It's like a joke up there. But yeah, they are truly, truly politically independent up there. In Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, they are truly independent.
I wonder what that is. Like, I know for like New Jersey, New York, they might elect a Republican to clean up this mess.
Right.
Like that's the narrative. Maybe that's how Chris Christie won. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
That's different how Giuliani won.
100%.
As mayor. But like I remember in the early 2000s, Tester ran as a Democrat in Montana and won.
Right.
And it's like that's kind of odd. Again, it's sort of another anomalous situation.
Right. He held that seat for a long time, and everybody thought there was like no way. Governor Sununu in New Hampshire is left, and then now former Senator Kelly Ayotte is in. But yeah, Tester just of course lost, but he's held off multiple, really strong contenders. And almost like Sherrod Brown too, another one that was another seat that was flipped. He sort of benefited from the calendar a little bit, but he fended off some really strong conservative challengers over time, and just obviously he got blown out this time. But he had held off a lot of challengers, and so it's interesting to see some of those blue dog senators get tossed. And
Manchin won in West Virginia.
Manchin, right.
And he's Democrat.
Right. So
Blue dog, of course.
Right. So now his hand-picked apprentice, Jim Justice, is one of the craziest. So he's a billionaire, and he owns the Greenbrier, which if you're from the Midwest or from anywhere outside of like the Northeast or the Mid-Atlantic, you've never heard of the Greenbrier. But the Greenbrier is like this incredible, like, plantation style resort, and it's this beautiful place, and I believe he has a private residence there, but it's like over 125 years old, and they've
Where
kept
is this?
It's in West Virginia. And so he was, a coal miner, had done, or a business guy, and he was Manchin's handpicked governor pick in 2014 when he came in as governor 2016. And he went through the first legislative session through the budget cycle and immediately became a Republican. Like, so he gets elected as a Democrat, and then after the first legislative session, the first budget process, he switches parties. And so now he's the heir apparent, and he takes Manchin's seat. It's very odd. Sort of like Manchin sort of handed it off, but it maybe didn't go the way he wanted it to. Definitely didn't keep it in the blue column.
So much is about branding.
Right.
And relationships. So if they feel like they have a relationship, even if it's superficial, of course, through screens and whatever, rallies, that if you are liked, you're liked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can overpower the positive or negative branding of a particular party.
Absolutely. So he's 6'7", like 400 pounds, has a really hard time moving around. And I don't know how he's going to be a senator, because there's a lot of footsteps.
Well, Fetterman, isn't he a senator?
Same thing, right. And I heard the other day when he was on Joe Rogan that they asked why he didn't wear a suit, and he said he was too fat or something like that, and that he couldn't keep pants on, so he likes to wear gym shorts because those can stay on.
Okay.
That was really crazy, but who knows if that's true. But so Jim Justice is a large guy, but part of his brand is he carries around this like giant American bulldog with him, and it's this big, ugly, slobbery bulldog, and he brings it out with him, and uses it as a prop, and it works, right? It works, and people like him, and people trust him, and so he gets up there for his state address, and he sits down, because he doesn't want to stand for an hour, and he just has this really unique style. Right, very like Trumpian in a way. They're actually friends, and have been friends for a long time. So I hope to see his sort of stock rise from a nationwide perspective, so other people can get to appreciate this guy, because he's a very unique person.
Is he a good statesman, though?
I mean, I think so. He's done a great job in West Virginia. West Virginia is...
Because how much of this is just pomp and bombast?
Totally, right.
Celebrity and
so West Virginia,
personality.
So West Virginia is in a difficult place geographically, right? So they've got Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Virginia and Tennessee kind of surrounding them, and they sort of end up in the place where there aren't anybody in those other states. There's not some, Hudson gets Minneapolis, right? Moorhead gets Fargo, like those like cross border, Charlotte in North Carolina. There's all these states that sort of benefit economically and politically from their adjacent neighbors.
Yep.
But what you see about West Virginia is they don't have those adjacent neighbors. They're actually put in a really, really bad position geographically. And so they've obviously had, the fentanyl issue and other types of hard drugs and stuff. The coal industry is still very important there. But it's one of the fastest growing states in the country, especially because Loudoun County in Virginia is becoming so expensive, so people are just moving just across the border.
Okay.
So there's a lot of DC types that are moving to West Virginia. There's industries that are moving in, and they've done a great job reforming their tax code. So people, businesses invest, they stay, they want to bring their people. There's a higher quality of life than most people are expecting in West Virginia. And so you're seeing Justice has really kept that march forward going.
Okay.
They're very forward from a technology perspective. Again, something they don't get a lot of credit for. And so it's a really odd place where if you talk to somebody that doesn't live there, it's like, oh, that's West Virginia, right? But there's actually amazing things that are going on there. And I think he's going to be a leader if he's allowed to be.
Do you know so much about West Virginia because of just the particulars of that state, and it's an interesting place, or is this your work? Is this your job? Is to like know what's going on? Like if I mentioned West Virginia, you just rattled off a whole bunch of information.
Right.
Well, what if I said Delaware, or if I said Oregon, or if I said I don't know, whatever state?
Yeah.
You're going to have a pretty good assessment of each of these states as part of your work, and then maybe go into like formally introducing yourself and what you do.
Yeah, I should probably do that. Those definitely come from the work that I've done over the years, and I've actually been to Charleston a couple of times, West Virginia, and it has like a Stillwater vibe in a way, but more.
I've been there too.
Yeah, like
a couple times. Yeah,
economically depressed vibe, but it has
outside the city.
Right.
So. Real quick, I was there because I was driving through the South interviewing people, in my other life.
Yeah.
And that was my last stop, and I wanted to check out Rand, West Virginia, because I saw the ESPN 30 for 30.
Oh, sure.
About Randy Moss and where he grew up there.
Of course.
And so I go there, and then I see this woman who's she was really disturbed.
Yeah.
But she wasn't, like, under the influence. She was just really upset about something. So I talked to her a little bit. And I ended up getting an interview from her for my YouTube channel.
Oh, no kidding.
And that interview does really well because she just sort of opens up about life there. And it's what we expect, right, from the stereotypes.
Right.
Her son and her kids are having trouble with drugs and, her relationship issues and the issues with the community and so forth, and how it used to be so different when she grew up there.
So a very short time ago.
She just talked about it over the generation, what it's been like there. And the video did well. And then I returned with the proceeds from the YouTube video and surprised her with those.
Look at you.
So that those were 2 videos I shot there. So I've been there anyway.
You're too nice. Well, that's great. I love to hear that. Good for you, man. That's awesome. And so you got to send that to me. And so I've been to Charleston twice. Like the worst people that know me know that I'm not like the best flyer. Like I'm on airplanes like 25 times a year, and I absolutely hate flying. And it's not that I don't trust it and I don't think it's safe, but it's just one of those things I just don't like doing. There's just this thing about sitting in an aluminum tube at 35,000 feet going 600 miles an hour that I just don't like for some reason.
You're restrained.
Yes, right.
You're just...
And I'm always sitting next to somebody that weighs like 900 pounds and is like pressing me against something. The fan never works.
Well, stop flying with the West Virginia guy. Him and his dog.
Right. So the first time I went to Charleston, I was like, okay, how long is it going to take? I was living in D.C. at the time. And I'm like, how long does it take me to get to Charleston? It's like, I don't know. It was a really long drive, like way longer than I thought. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to drive.
Country.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, right. I'm not going to drive through the mountains for 2 days and to get to West Virginia. So I'll fly. So we get on if you've been to Reagan airport in Arlington, Virginia. So we get, there's like, the old one, this is before the new terminals have been built, but it was like the A terminal's like the old school one, like that was built in the 60s or the 50s. And it's amazing. It's like a historic landmark. It's a beautiful building. And then there's A and B terminal, and then there's like this other terminal. And so we had to go to like the other terminal, like take a bus and then walk, and then a long way. I thought we were gonna make it to Maryland like by the time we got there, and the planes got progressively smaller as we went.
Yeah.
And like we went from like the 747s down to this thing was a school bus with wings duct taped to it. And I looked at that, and I had a staffer and a scholar that I was taking with me that was going to testify, and I was like, I'm not doing it. I don't want to do it. And so we get on, this plane is from the 60s.
You did it.
Yeah, we did it. It was like 9 seats. I was like, I'm going to die. This is over.
Seriously? 9 seats?
Yeah, it was so small. We take off, but it was like a Delta plane. Like the girl had like the cart. It was hilarious. It was like,
those are the kind of planes that take to Bemidji, I think.
Right. No, like something really small. It was smaller than those.
Yeah.
And I just walked by the gate at Delta, right? The A terminal that has those flights. It's smaller than those planes.
Okay.
It had a propeller. It definitely had 2 propellers, like an old school propeller.
So this wasn't a turbine?
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
Turbine.
It had propellers. Yeah. And so we get, we take off, and it was like we must have caught some drift, and the plane just like starts going backwards and like drifts, and I was like, oh man, we're just gonna literally fall out of the sky. But we caught it. We made it.
You were surfing
surfing
the gusts.
Yes. And so we caught traction. We made it, but we never flew above like 20,000 feet. We were there in 45
Beautiful
minutes.
views.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was incredible. Like you got those incredible
Can you
mountain
go a little
views.
lower? I want to see those Appalachians a little closer.
It's like I live in Stillwater, and it's like
the drone.
Yeah, right. Or like a hot air balloon, like in Stillwater, like they literally drop 10 feet above our house, like, and they come all the way down into the neighborhoods and pop back up. We could have done that in this plane, I think. And yeah, but so we landed at Chuck Yeager Airport, which is on top of this hill. And so when you take off, you fly out over the hill, and it's this really kind of wild thing. And yeah, people there are interesting, and I liked West Virginia, but you know, I've gotten to travel to I don't know how many states. When I left the Hill, I went to a policy center called Mercatus, and that's based out of George Mason University. And I worked on state and federal policy, but mostly state. And so I got to go to places I never thought I'd go.
What does that mean? Like, so you are a government relations consultant, advisor,
Professional.
professional.
Yeah. So,
lobbyist?
Professional.
Do you ever use that label?
Yeah. Sometimes I am a lobbyist.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a hat I put on. You know, like there's
It's different than, that's not, that, but lobbyist isn't just all of it. Like you that's part of it.
Right. It's sort of like, you know, when you're playing baseball, sometimes you're on offense and sometimes you're on defense. And,
Okay.
You know, like maybe only the pitcher or the manager needs to lobby, right? Or register as a lobbyist. And so sometimes you're the pitcher and sometimes you're the outfielder. And there's different things that you can do. You know, a lot of people think, especially when I first started working in Congress, you know, my family and my friends would be like, "Oh, all you do is meet with lobbyists," and it would, you know, just the sneering, right, that you would get, and I'd be like,
"From who?"
From friends and family, or like,
Boy,
you know,
really?
colleagues. Oh yeah, no, that was the thing I wasn't prepared for, right? Was when I made this jump.
Because lobbyist is a dirty word.
Oh well, or any work in government to a lot of people is a dirty word.
Okay.
So I thought everybody was going to be like totally cool with Jason doing this, and there was a lot of people that really didn't like it, and that, you know, maybe I don't talk to so much anymore because they thought like, oh, you know, you're on the different team, or maybe now you're this way, or you move away, whatever it might be. But I was like, I started to learn.
Lobbyist doesn't have the best reputation.
No, it doesn't, and it should. It should have a good reputation because the world wouldn't function without them. And I always say, like, you know what? Like, okay, well, what do you do for a living? And they're like, well, you know, I hate lobbyists. And I'm like, oh, well, who do you work for? Like, oh, I work for Delta. I'm like, oh, well, who do you think has a whole bunch of lobbyists? Like, you know, the pilots have lobbyists. The flight attendants have lobbyists.
Do people dislike it because, well, one, lobbyists have a big influence on policy, maybe more than they should.
Right.
And then, so I guess maybe just the general idea that there are so many. Maybe it's like attorneys where it's like, we understand we need them, but there's just, like, they're expensive and there's so many, and they're on those annoying commercials, and they're chasing ambulances. You know, it's just that I think just the field people find kind of icky.
Well, right, and that's the thing, is that that's one of the things that we've tried to work in at Terrapin, is to really change the perception, but also almost to change the role, right? Almost to change what's expected of the person that's doing the work. Change the expectations of the clients. There's an old sort of worn path that I jokingly call, you know, like the used snake oil salesman. And I'll say, like, you know, hey, you can set up shop in a town until everybody kind of gets wise to what it is that you're doing. And, you know, you can get your top hat and your cane out and you can do the song and dance, but you can only stay there for so long. And we've gone the complete opposite direction of that. Not that there is that in government affairs. I mean, every industry has people that maybe shouldn't be doing it. There's a couple of organizations that you and I are aware of that I think there's a lot of people that are a part of that shouldn't be doing what they're doing. But there's professionals that have, and this is another thing, is that most of it to me is jealousy. People are jealous that someone is getting something that they might think they want, right? Like, so for example, so why would anybody not like Apple lobbying Congress, right? It makes the Apple phone more readily available. It makes it cheaper. It makes it maybe better. It improves trade deals, or, you know, military alliances, or mineral rights, so we can get the things that we want. Imagine if Apple couldn't lobby the federal government. Imagine if you couldn't lobby, like say yesterday, right? And bring your redresses towards government. Imagine if the government said, you know what, nobody can talk to us. And we don't want to take anybody's opinion on anything. And the only thing that we're going to listen to is a vote.
I just saw the future. We all have flying cars.
Right.
Without lobbyists. No,
yeah, right. But so the point is that like every single thing that you touch, this table, this microphone.
It's hard to cut through the negative stereotype. So the first thing you said, I confess, when you said, what if Apple didn't have lobbyists? I'd say, well, then we would have more competition probably in the phone market. Right, so that's the first thing I go to is how big companies will use lobbying as a way to restrict competition, right? To build a wall around their,
that's different. But yes, you're exactly right.
Build a moat, whatever.
Yeah. So the smart operators, what they do is they go in and they build what's some call it a regulatory moat or a moat around themselves.
Sam Altman's doing that now.
Yeah,
with OpenAI.
100%.
He had been.
Right. Oh, hey, here's
it
this.
It seemed.
I'm a big Sam Altman guy, but. Hey, here's this really great invention. Regulate me.
We need to regulate. I mean, when the founder of something is saying we need to regulate this, and maybe he's right, but it's just the incentive there.
Right.
Now that I'm through, and I'm in, and I'm ridiculously wealthy. Yeah. Now we need to make it difficult for people to get into this. Right.
And and you do that all the time. And if you're intelligent and you're doing this work.
So this is why lobbyists have a.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think so, but at the same time, it's incumbent upon the innovator, right, to innovate around that, right? And so one of the things that lobbyists do is they also help you navigate the landmines, right, that are placed there.
Well,
Government's going to create landmines.
Too bad they're there from the start. How about give me an example of you talked about some of the like the behind the scenes things, the things that we don't see that are like super beneficial, like you said about mineral rights or defense or these other applications that a company like Apple would just enhance society by their lobbying efforts. Right. Maybe shed some light on that sort of thing.
So I'll give you a weird one.
Okay.
Don't sue me.
Weird is good for media.
Right. I've remembered this as Firestone tires. But don't quote me. I believe it was Firestone. So I got a meeting. I handled trade for Tom on the Hill.
Tom.
Emmer, the crypto king, the current House Majority Whip. And I handled trade for him. And obviously that was a major issue at that time. Speaker Boehner and then Ryan wanted trade promotion authority to give to the president so we could negotiate a couple different trade deals. There was the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and then there was the Transatlantic Trade Agreement. And then there was a couple of cleanups.
What year? Who was president?
So Obama, so this is 2014, 2015 timeframe. And so Trade Promotion Authority, Congress gives the president the authority to go negotiate a particular trade deal, and then it creates a structure on the things that that Congress wants to see. So industry and the executive, right, lobby Congress very hard on what that promotion should be, what that authority should be. And this is essentially the single probably greatest camel's nose under the tent or wedge issue that Trump used was bad trade deals.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is, let's say a country can come drastically or order of magnitude less in labor costs. It takes, like, we met with, they make the camping company, they make the Navy SEALs gear, Coleman, I think. Yeah, Coleman camping gear. Mm-hmm. They make all the Navy SEALs gear in outside of St. Cloud.
Oh.
And it's cheaper for them. Labor is so expensive in the United States. So the two main sort of textile jurisdictions in the world are South Carolina and then the Philippines and China. There's in Vietnam. It's a growing market. It's cheaper for them to basically get the stuff from South Carolina, ship it, over to Asia, have it made there, ship it back, finalized in Minnesota, and then retail sell it, for them to do it all here.
I understand.
Think about that. You have to send it back and forth across the Pacific Ocean twice. It's still faster and cheaper. And Trump came and said, look, that is a problem. And so lobbyists and governments had essentially ground that system to a halt, right? Where it would, to produce something in the United States, it became that expensive.
Okay.
But they also made it easier to be imported and exported, right? And to allow for financing. So we can go into any store basically anywhere and buy anything, right? So from that perspective, every single person benefits from that, even though there are some people that do suffer from it, right? Those people that maybe lose their jobs or a plant closes down, right? So and that's all Trump is saying.
So you're saying we benefit from it because we get 100%. Cheaper goods and services.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the problem is that all the, and I have so many free market economics friends that are going to be mad at me for saying this, but the problem is the unintended consequences of the trade deal, right? Is the losers. And the problem is the losers have been us for too long.
Sure.
And so then now lobbyists are going to go through and negotiate to make it easier to, reshore and onshore American manufacturing, to do things here. So the cycle is going to change. But the Firestone example that I just wanted to give really, really fast is they had a rubber tree plantation in, I want to say it was Ghana, but that I could be wrong on that. But it was an African country, West African country. They had the rubber tree plantation. They had it for like 125 years, and this is where they got their rubber from. So for 125 years, they had built and cultivated this town, and they had thousands of people living there. They have weddings there. They have hospitals there. This is where people go to school. This is where people's they have stores
in West Africa.
Yeah, in West Africa. And it's the only thing keeping this entire area afloat. And so they were there to lobby on behalf of Trade Promotion Authority to improve some shipping issues, right? To help because there was, I believe it was Chinese, cheaper, imitation Chinese rubber, I believe is what they said. Again, you're going back like 10 years. But my point is that there was some unfair competition that was coming in. And the Firestone team came in and was really smart about what it was that they were bringing, and they had been intentional for 125 years. And the benefit to me is I have safe tires and on my car that are there when I need them.
So it was a consumer protection.
Yes, and then
result,
right, and then it had untold effects on people that wouldn't otherwise be able to have that quality of life.
So Firestone, by protecting their company, their product from unfair competition, and by unfair you mean cheaper, but also less quality, dangerous perhaps.
Right.
Product coming from elsewhere.
Yes.
So what did they lobby for exactly?
I can't say.
Let's not import those bad tires, or let's put a tariff on them, or whatever.
Right. I don't want to say. I can't say exactly what they wanted, but what I can say is that to for the United States to promote good, sound legal policy and to protect American consumers, but also to protect investments that we've made, right? And there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program.
Yeah.
So sometimes that can go in the wrong way, but other times it can go in the right way. Like say investing in commercialized space. When everybody freaked out, we're getting rid of the shuttle, and does anybody want to go back to that? Does anybody want to get rid of SpaceX or Blue Origin? No way. They want to keep that. So again, lobbyists. How I found out about SpaceX was SpaceX lobbyists.
Sounds like salespeople.
Yeah, I mean it is to an extent, but you're more like a translator and educator and a connector. And so how I found out about SpaceX was the SpaceX lobbyists came and met with me because I handled space for my boss, and there was an authorization bill that were coming up, and there was some funding that was
authorization bill.
Yeah, so Congress or any state legislative body authorizes hey, I'm going to give you $100, sort of like your mom giving you lunch money. Hey, here's your, you're going to get, if you do what you're supposed to do, Brandon, you're going to get $10 for lunch this week, right? And then on Monday she appropriates it too. So she authorizes it, and then she appropriates it too. So then she gives it to you every day. She gives you $2 every day, right, to go to lunch. So it's the same process. Yeah, right. Still does. So it's the same process at the federal level.
For that industry.
For every industry. Every industry is going to be regulated in some way, shape, or form, or is going to have some interest.
This is also why people don't like lobbyists. Because of the necessity. Like, yes, you're necessary, but why does everything have to be like? If I want to start a salon, right?
Well, right. So so that's an issue that I've actually worked on a lot. Is that's called occupational licensure. That's
ironic, given your hairstyle.
Yeah, I mean, as I tell my daughter, the hair is there, you just can't see it. But so occupational licensure is a moat that companies have created, but it's associations of companies, and they say, and Minnesota is really bad for occupational licensure issues, and they basically allow an industry to say and set standards around that industry, and say, okay, well, you have to do X number of hours before you can become a hair care specialist or whatever, masseuse or whatever.
These are statewide issues usually.
Statewide issues, yes. They're usually commissions that are run and appointed by the state, and that is probably more responsible for more pass-through regulations and anti-competition than any lobbyist is ever going to be responsible for, because what those industries now do is they say, okay, well, and I've talked with state.
Do the industries lobby for those steep regulations?
So certain players within an industry might.
Yeah.
There's some industries where, like on patents, let's say Apple and Google are going to be on completely opposite pages.
Sure.
But on data privacy, they might be on the same page, right, on a particular issue. So what you see is different industry associations for different industries to handle different things different ways.
It feels like the same kind of dynamic you have when you have a prosecutor and a defense attorney arguing before a judge. And in this case, it's two lobbyists from two separate, whatever they are.
Right.
Maybe it's end gun violence and pro-Second Amendment. Right. And these two lobbyists are going to go to the senator or representative to get their vote, right? So it's the same kind of legal dynamic.
Right. Maybe a little foreshadowing here, but there's a formula to it. And there's a systemization and there's a process to it. And so it doesn't look like a court hearing. It looks more like, one side is going to haul rock from one mountainside and build a building. And the other is going to pick a different mountain and haul different rocks to make maybe the same building or a different building. And when the clock stops, right, who has the better building? Who has the better infrastructure?
So it's a reality cooking show.
It's kind of, it's kind of like Hell's Kitchen in a way, or like Chopped, right? Like, my wife and I loved Chopped for a long time, and at the end, right, they didn't judge the last dish. The winner wasn't necessarily the one that had the best dessert. The winner was the one that had the best full meal, right? All three courses. It's the same thing. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Sometimes there's tactical sprints. There's a vote coming in 10 minutes. How do we vote? Or I need to make a phone call to this senator. Get me on the line right now. There are those. But if any consultant in the space is going to treat a project like a sprint, it goes very, very poorly. It doesn't work.
Sure.
You have to think about it like a marathon. And the problem is that most businesses and most consumers of government want to think of it like input output. It's a sprint. Oh, I push a button, right? And what we're trying to do is give them that freedom, right, to the extent that we can, right? But because there's another part to it that it's not art, it's not science, it's something else.
But as a red-blooded freedom-loving American, does part of you just have a ideological clash with your industry?
No.
Because it's like you're having to go to these politicians, these lawmakers, and do you sometimes ask yourself, oh man, I shouldn't even have to be here. Like, this shouldn't even be up to this person to decide the fate of my industry. I think that's what keeps a lot of real small government people out of government, obviously, because they think this job shouldn't even exist, or at least, it's the kind of work that I have no interest in, because it's become such a busy, so much that they would say nonsense.
Right.
I don't know. I imagine sometimes, I don't know, but yeah, go ahead and answer that, because I think you were about to just say no. I don't feel that way at all.
No, it's a First Amendment right.
It's a right.
It is a First Amendment right for us to bring redresses towards government, and it doesn't. And Supreme Court Justice John Roberts said, it's not upon the court to determine the efficacy of the policy, right? Whether it's a good or a bad policy. We're umpires here. Does this meet a constitutional standard?
Do you sometimes say there shouldn't be any policy? Let my company do this. This isn't this shouldn't be even something for you to even worry about. I mean, if we're SpaceX, I understand how you have to regulate the air.
Right.
And if we're trying to build a new radio station, you guys have regulation over the airwaves.
Yep.
But if my client wants to use a chainsaw to create sculpture, they
should be able to. Right.
Yeah.
So that's a concept of
you argue for inactivity.
Yeah, right. And you will find that, and you will see that, and it's more common than the average person believes. Mm-hmm. The concept that I like to do is coined by, I don't know if Adam coined it, but Adam Thier is one of my favorite scholars on this issue, is permissionless innovation, right? Is this Section 230 for internet publishers? Go ahead, create something, right? The Telecommunications Act of 1996. Go ahead, internet, create something.
Yeah, if you compare the U.S. to the EU.
Oh my gosh.
And how they approach the internet.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I heard something the other day, and tell me if you've heard this or if this is right. That there hasn't been $100 billion company created in the EU in over 30 years. Like, we've got more companies that have been created in that time. It's insane.
Yeah.
And so we've got more coming, right? And because they tried to regulate it, they tried to regulate innovation and centrally plan. And so the American system, again, there's a lobbyist on one side saying, hey, like maybe the RFK lobbyist, hey, I'm concerned about the health or the unintended environmental consequences.
Yeah.
And then there's maybe like the Trumpian sort of lobbyist that's like, hey, I just really want to make a little bit more money here. I'm going to improve the world, I'm going to make a bigger pie and improve people's lives. And then you could have, say, maybe more like your more liberal or modern day liberal, where it's sort of like, well, I don't like the people that are going to get rich off of this. And so I don't know if I want this to happen. I don't know if I want to let this thing through because I don't like the politics of the person that's going to benefit. And that to me has thrown off, from a cultural perspective, that's thrown us off kilter. This like moralizing and criminalization of policy differences has sent a shockwave through the VC community, through the banking community, through entire industries have felt public and political pressure to conform to some non-economic form of growth that sort of is like a bastardized version of what they're doing in the EU. And I really hope that yesterday, or whatever day it is, Tuesdays, the response from Tuesday.
Are you talking about like DEI or
you could throw that.
Is it ESG?
ESG more than DEI. I think DEI is something separate. I mean, I think it's laudable, of course.
So stick with ESG then.
Yeah, but is sort of like a divestiture in particular forms of energy or consumer products and goods. Picking out, and crypto is probably one of the single greatest victims of this sort of ESG sort of structure, is when you hear about criticisms of crypto, it's, uses too much electricity.
Yeah.
It's too white. It's too, they throw up the sort of standard barriers to having a constructive conversation about it. That happens with manufacturing of all different kinds, chemical production, petrochemicals specifically, energy production, and now we have these monstrosity wind turbines that don't work, that are crazy expensive, are killing birds. There's all sorts of problems. Destroys entire horizon lines, and then they become so expensive, like in places in California, they're unable to function economically, and so they abandon them. So now we've got these graveyards of 30-story high windmills that we can't do anything with because we can't put them in a landfill, and so there's going to be unintended consequences from those things. But I think that, like I said, it's that sort of like moralization or criminalization, and wanting to pick and choose winners. And that is the scariest thing, right? Is picking and choosing the winners. And like the best example that I can probably give that I think everybody would sort of understand the point that I'm making is when President Biden, and think about how consequential this is. Think about the mistake that he made in this moment. When like the history books are written, he had his White House summit on electronic vehicles, and he didn't invite Elon Musk, and he didn't even mention him by name. And he knew the problems that was going to cause, but because the unions didn't like Elon Musk, he couldn't curry favor. And so because we don't like the politics of the person that's going to potentially gain, we're not going to let them play. And look what that did. That cost him hundreds of millions of dollars in fundraising, right, from Elon and his friends. But it created this animosity, and it put a spotlight onto the unfairness of how they were rewarding people politically. And this is like, you know, if you read Atlas Shrugged, like, this is like the whole sort of like center concept, right, that bureaucrats, and again, I'm not like the biggest Atlas Shrugged fan, but you can see little bits and pieces of it, and which was why I think we're kind of where you're headed is like this sort of like libertarian sort of concept about, you know, where should government be involved or where should industry, you know, where's that line get drawn? And then the Atlas Shrugged critique, right, is that they're going to pick their friends. They're going to pick the people that benefit from them. And all I can say is look at the Biden administration, the Harris campaign, and tell me that wasn't the dynamic. There was these are the people that are going to benefit, and the rest of you can go to hell. That was the message, loud and clear. And if you had any question about their intentions when they called you garbage, after they had called you a fascist, after they had called you a Nazi, if you had any question that you were not going to be on the inside team, that you were going to be at the kids' table forever, then I don't know what else you need to see.
I mean, that kind of, I guess you'd call it pettiness, but
it's not pettiness. I wish it was pettiness. Pettiness would at least make some sense. I think I'm better than you, right? Because at least the normal person can get that.
By petty, I mean like they're letting, like, you know, I don't like you. Get in the way of But, you know, progress for the country.
Right. And crypto is at ground zero on this.
I could see that happening under Trump too, though. If it doesn't like you.
So it's always about whose ox is getting gored, is what I say. So when, for example, there's a politician that I know, and this person ran for office because they felt that they were disempowered in their previous position, and so they wanted to get a higher position to make sure it was fair for people like her at that time. But the first thing that she did was started to close off everybody, right? It's like an animal farm, right? The pigs come in and say, hey, we got to get rid of Farmer Jones, you know, 2 legs bad, 4 legs good, right? Well, then the pigs move into the house, and then it's, you know, 4 legs good, 2 legs better. And so, you know, meet the new boss the same as the old boss. There's always going to be that. And again, it's whose ox is getting gored. And so why we have checks and balances and why we're supposed to have a free, robust media is to hold people accountable. And why we have government relations, right, is so when a company sees, there's some unfair practices going on here. Like the federal government, like, again, Coinbase says, we're going to do everything that you ask us to do. We're going to meet you and some. And then we're going to talk to you 40 times and meet with you at every single step of the game. And then bang, Gary Gensler decides, you know what? I'm about to approve this BlackRock ETF, but I want to make sure that everybody knows that where I stand. And so I'm just going to sue them. Right.
Sue who?
Coinbase. And I'm going to take them to court, and I'm going to bring a regulatory judgment upon them, even though they're communicating with me. And of course, Binance has a different, right? Binance's game is different. And so I think that that's the other piece that's important about government affairs, is that Binance has a different end game than Coinbase. they have a different end game than Kraken or anybody else. So any organization, and so think just like you, right? Like, you and I mean, you and I are pretty similar. We've grown up in the same state. We're about the same age, but our end goal from government is totally different, right? We live in different cities. We have different experiences. We have different goals and aspirations and things that we want to do. So technically what we need from government is really, really different. So people that try to advocate no government or no government relations, right? Or that somehow engaging your government is bad, right? Actually, what they're really doing is taking your choice away and taking your voice away and just saying, if it sucks, well, there it is. Sorry, it sucks. And you can't fix it. And so I think that's the other piece, is that the people, especially on the libertarian side, need to accept that there is a role for government, and because everybody else believes there is, right? And unless you want to go and create some space colony somewhere, like where there isn't a government.
Yeah.
But as we found at Black Lives Matter in the chop zones, right? The same people that said, "Oh, we don't need any police," within like 24 hours had created enforcers and were beating people up and were killing people. And so what we see is like the government is probably the best, worst option. And so there is a role for government. And if government is going to make decisions that impact everyone, then they should probably make the best ones. And if we're going to have a First Amendment, it should probably be for everyone. And so an organization that's going to engage government should be able to do so. And Terrapin's central premise is making better operators, making better, smarter operators so they can engage government in a better way. And so we don't see these pendulum swings. We don't see people feeling like they're left out, like they've lost agency, that they don't have connections because they couldn't write, a $6,600 check to get somebody's attention. And for far too long, it has felt that way. And so we're going to do our small part in trying to fix that.
Do you like it?
Do I like what?
Do you like your work?
Oh my gosh. It doesn't even feel like work. It's like what I would do if I won the lottery.
Oh.
Right. If I was if I was a trillionaire. Is
there a particular kind of industry or company? Like have you turned down clients because I've got I don't do work with those sorts of clients, so no, I'm sorry, I'm not for you.
Well, as a startup founder, you work with everybody.
Sure.
You work with anyone that will look at you. So I've worked in areas where I maybe didn't have as much experience, but I understood the formula, and I knew what to do, and got really successful outcomes for companies. Just because you don't have a ton of experience in something or in a particular industry. Now, as specialization within a company or a firm or whatever starts to really, kind of take off, the organization gets larger and you need to have specialists, then yes, you want to be, no, that's our healthcare person, that's our, technology person, and never the two shall meet. But at our phase of our life cycle, being a generalist is just fine.
Sure.
Yeah. There are industries that we maybe specialize in a little bit more, technology specifically, data specifically, but we can, and emerging tech definitely, but we can work in any space, and do work in any space.
Let's keep going with crypto then, because obviously that's where I'm in blockchain.
Right.
And let's tie that into the election. So
Definitely.
Did the whole landscape for this industry in the U.S. change literally overnight?
Literally overnight. Yeah, for a lot of things, this is a before Christ, after death kind of moment where you have to look at the world from a pre-Trump to a post-Trump world. And there may be no better industry or policy area than crypto to look at that BC AD moment.
Yeah.
And things are going to change a lot.
What was Gensler's MO?
So my admittedly my opinion of him is a little bit biased because of my influencers. And my influencers have been people that really don't care for him very much.
You mean the influencers you follow?
Well, just, like the people that I have heard, the people's opinions that I trust and respect.
Sure.
Operators within the industry that work on, a tactical level, so maybe for a particular company, or work for a trade association or an advocacy group, government, legislative staff or members that are working around him and his SEC. And there has been some concerns about how they've chosen to handle themselves. I think if you take a step back and apply a sober lens to what you're thinking, what could be occurring, and there's the version that I think you and I think it is, right? That they're like,
I honestly don't know it. I was always scratching my head, like, how can you find Kraken after they did everything you asked them to do?
Right.
Like, it just seemed almost like there was a Mad King
a little bit
thing going on here.
Definitely. Well, especially when you find out, again, to the extent that this is true, that he wanted to be a high-level executive within one of these large companies, and they told him no. And so then when he, gets the SEC role, he, takes a very steady and swift hand, because he probably saw this is what this industry needs to do to survive, right? I think if Gary Gensler was sitting here, if he would be honest with you, which is another problem, but if he was to be fully honest with you, my guess would be is that he would say, hey, this is a radically transformational technology that is totally different and not compatible with our existing monetary system.
100%.
And if I'm going to allow, if the SEC is going to have the authority to make securities, to maintain a sound regulatory environment around securities. These look like securities. These act like securities. You're treating them like securities, and you can give them a different name, but if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck.
Sure.
The other piece is the CFTC. And the CFTC was the original regulator of Bitcoin, sort of, the initial regulator of Bitcoin and this sort of commoditization process. And so there's clearly a foot race between CFTC, which is an ag futures, trading commission, right? That's sort of been saddled with this crypto issue, which it doesn't understand, doesn't want, doesn't need. And then you have securities, an exchange commission over here that wants that, right? They are hungry for that. So you're seeing CFTC maybe retract a little bit, and SEC sort of invade. Congress has been quiet. Congress has not been able to come up with anything. And that is, again, because of special interests and political donations, but also to how radical is this technology is, and how it can be misused. And so, like I said, a couple minutes ago, it's like, hey, they throw up like the typical barriers, like, terrorists will use it to finance something, or Putin benefits.
I just didn't understand his thought process around, at least in the case of Kraken, I believe they did everything asked, or when they were asked, I think in the case of Kraken, they said, you have to get a license or you have to do these things, and those things weren't even available. Like there is no form XYZ 2022,
for this type of
and then
industry,
they ended up getting fined because they didn't do what was, I believe, impossible to do.
Yeah.
So it just so I guess what I'm wondering is, okay, is it malice or incompetence?
Probably a little bit of both. But I think the thing is that the malice comes in inherently when you talk to people that are in the crypto space, they do not understand how a regulator thinks.
Sure.
And when they talk about regulation, it talks about getting around it. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of like, as a parent, if I have two teenagers.
Yeah. You will respect my authority.
Right, my authority. And when I say to my 15-year-old, who's late, where were you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or when I call him when he was supposed to be home at 10 and I call him at 10:05 and he doesn't answer. So my spidey senses go on. As a regulator, your spidey senses are going on.
Sure.
And here's the thing is that most companies, most of the time, aren't following the law 100%.
Yeah.
Most regulators are like police officers, right? They're like, they know, hey, like, sometimes there's that cool cop that will, like, when everybody's speeding on 494, they'll kind of drive in the middle of everybody to slow everyone down. There's that kind of cop. And then there's the cop that's standing that knows you're speeding and is standing on top of the bridge with the scanner. And then there's 9 cars that come in behind and pull everybody over, right? So there's different regulation for different types of activity. Mm-hmm. And so when you see almost a contagion of these companies, these boom and bust sort of those initial companies, we've already forgotten the names of, but FTX was sort of the poster child. But when you see this and you see hundreds of billions of dollars wrapped up into a particular issue, like, it is your prerogative as the SEC commissioner to investigate and to look into this.
Yeah.
However, it seems that he's treating this industry differently. And then there's other regulations that are, and if you build a digital assets product, you're now going to be regulated like a typical bank or I mean, this is outrageous. It's insane. Sure. And so so they've gone too far, and that was in the infrastructure bill. The infrastructure bill, there was a small amendment on digital asset brokers, and it caused a contagion of new regulatory issues, and it brought the regulatory world from the corporate office, right, of cracking down to that individual developer. Yeah. And so they went too far. But what they were trying to do is control something as they're trying to transition from a paper dollar world to a digital asset world. And so they want to try, I believe, to manage this industry. But the problem is, again, like I said a few minutes ago, about picking winners and losers. Yeah. Right? They're trying to pick the winners because boy, oh boy, did BlackRock's ETF get approved fast. Really quick. And I bought it. I don't care what you say about me. I bought IBIT, and I am happy that I did. I understand why some people don't like it, especially some of the purists. But BlackRock didn't seem to have a hard time building an ETF off of stuff. But the people that are building, right, are having a hell of a time. So
unless they built really early.
Right?
So I'm struck by how if you would have mined Bitcoin or bought Bitcoin, say you bought it on Coinbase for $150 back in like 2012 or 2013, there was no there was no enforcement mechanism. So unless you're really honest, you got under before the IRS got wise to it. Yeah, no, and you're home free. So there's some OG Bitcoin millionaires out there.
There are.
They're home free. Unless again they want to be a good patriot and pay their taxes. Yeah. They're not going to be forced to.
Yeah, no. And Uncle Sam, again, I was just going over this with my accountant this morning.
Or the first ICOs, like Ethereum. Yeah, they got away with it because they were so early before I even knew right. And now it's like ubiquitous and
nobody knew how to we still don't know how to regulate a language model, which is our point about Sam Altman earlier, right? Like, we don't know how to regulate those things, and good regulation makes for good markets, right? And so then in some cases a highly regulated market is good, and in other cases
so you're not like the libertarian
I err on the side
of what would they call that laissez-faire,
laissez-faire sort of concept. Yeah, no, absolutely. But I'm all for, hey, I get on a Delta flight because I think that Delta is the best, because I trust it, because I know that they don't want their stock price to fall. Yeah. But it has been proven, every single day almost, just like it isn't in FTX's, prerogative to go bankrupt and everybody go to jail. That wasn't their plan, but they did it. And it's really easy to figure out why they did it and how they did it and where things went wrong. And so now, because we can have smart regulation, we can say, oh, okay, well, you can't be, custodian and a trader, right, at the same time, right? Like you can hold it, or you can disperse it, and you can move it around, or an exchange, right? But you can't be both, or there's got to be some drastic firewall. And I think that some libertarians are the beneficiaries of a system that's already been built for them.
Yeah.
And they come into it and think like, oh, well, if we build this thing, it's like, okay, well, have you ever read the book, the War of the Rats? That's the Upton Sinclair book, though, about, meat packing and rats.
Jungle.
The jungle, yes.
Yeah.
And that's right. And,
I think he's from Little Falls.
Is that from Little Falls?
I think, is Upton Sinclair from Little Falls?
I had no idea.
Who's the writer from Little Falls? Anyway, there's a well-known writer from Little Falls, Minnesota.
So, but the point is that like, you don't buy boar's head meat, then think that boar's head meat is safe because boar's head has a profit incentive to stay safe. Boar's Head has a profit incentive to sell as much meat as they possibly can sell, and so when their liverwurst kills 12 people, right, like, what does everyone say kind of reflexively is like, oh, well, like audit them, throw them in jail, right? But that's not the answer. The answer is, okay, what does good hygiene really look like? How do we balance the most profitable company possible and the safest company possible? And, because there's a safety incident. Somebody's always going to get sick. We all know it's going to happen, right? It was like, when we were kids, like there's a spider in your cereal kind of thing, right?
See, but your philosophy is that the litigious enforcement, like,
is wrong.
It's just like, we can be more proactive than that.
We can be a lot more, and permissionless innovation is the best way to do it. It's just like speech. The best way to overcome bad speech is with more good speech.
But you need guardrails. You would say.
You need guardrails, right? You can't say to someone like, I'm going to kill you. You know what I mean? Like, you can't say that. You can't have a company where it's like, oh, we're going to sell meat, but we're going to let it be 85 degrees in here all the time, and we're not going to clean anything because, my profit model doesn't work like that, right? You can't have that. And so I think that, like I said, I think some libertarians get stuck in thinking that there's some like perfect or utopian sort of concept around like
it is sort of an interesting contrast, even almost a reflection or mirror image, a bizarro version of, like, remember Milton Friedman's criticism of progressives was, who are these angels? Like, who are these people who are going to regulate things fairly and dole out everything equally? Who do you think these people are? But then at the same time, a progressive's critique of libertarianism was, who are these angelic businessmen who are going to just create and then not try to squeeze a little bit of extra profit? Right? We need to safeguard ourselves from our vices, our 7 deadly sins, greed being one of them. So, we can't just wait for them to make a mistake, because that's the libertarian position. Like, well, if a restaurant makes bad food, they get sued. So,
but why do they get sued? How do they get sued if there's not a regulatory code for them to violate?
Well, because they're sued because their food made them sick, and then there's like harm. Like it's like they assaulted me with food
right.
Or
But what I'm saying is that take their position to the logical conclusion. If you can get sued, if like, oh well, there's legal recourse. Why is there legal recourse?
Sure.
And so there is legal, and they are not afraid to sue people. It's not like when they're wrong they don't call the cops, or it's not when like they're wrong. And again, I love libertarians. Like, don't get me wrong. Like but I'm saying take this sort of regulatory sort of position to its logical conclusion, which is why I don't like fully go there. I'm like, I'd probably say like I'm like 50% libertarian.
You're putting regulatory code in the same basket as criminal.
So no, but there are some similarities, right?
I mean, it's all government enforcement,
right? And so you should be able to.
But one seems preventative and one seems like reactive,
right? And so what I always do is how I always like can sort of thread the needle, right? Is I'm probably like 50 to 60% libertarian on these issues, right? Like, I definitely lean that way, but I can see the other side. I understand why those and that there is a formula. There's a way to fix it, and there's a way to fix it well, and that's what I've excelled at, and that's what I've done for the last 20 years, right? Is work on.
That's your niche.
Yes, right.
That's your
and work on fixing a particular problem for a particular group, and then today it's this group, tomorrow it's another group with a different problem. And like I said, that's what we've spent 3 years working on at Terrapin, is how do we transition right out of sort of this old school sort of lobbying sort of business into a more tech-driven space, where companies get, inputs, outputs, they get, their normal business process. They don't have to stop everything to work with their lobbyists, right? They can leverage their own data and make their own improvements to the government.
That's the big, understanding for why we need lobbyists, because there needs to continually be new regulations.
Always, yeah.
Because there's always new innovations.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so, we didn't have cryptocurrency 20 years ago.
Right.
So we need to regulate it.
Yeah.
Whatever the industry is. Let's go back to crypto.
Yeah.
So Gensler will be fired.
Gone.
Like he's as good as gone.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. He will not. He will resign. He won't give Trump the satisfaction to fire him. That'd be my guess.
And then, what's your prediction then for the next 6 months, or let's say after Trump gets in office in January? What are the first 6 months of 2025 going to look like, or some time frame like that?
Right.
Like, do you anticipate there being like a real explosion of companies or something like that, where they're less burdened by the uncertainty? Something like, things just really develop.
Yeah. No, I was
in this industry.
I've complained to you about consensus last year, or this year's consensus in Austin. And I went and I was just like, this is the most unserious group of people that I have ever been around.
Go to East Denver.
Yeah, right. That would be worse.
All the meme coin.
Yeah.
All the parties there, yeah.
And if
there was a Dogecoin costume party.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh,
so
why wouldn't there be?
Right up your alley.
Yeah, right. And I was like, of course, RFK was there, and he was amazing, and and spoke eloquently, and there was a lot of great.
You're vying for a position in the cabinet, aren't you?
I want to make America healthy again.
Yeah.
And
get rid of Red 46 or Red 15 or whatever the dye is in food.
Yes, whatever that is, I don't want.
I don't know. Those are they compared the Fruit Loops to Canada to the Fruit Loops to U.S. The Canada Fruit Loops look sick.
It looks sad.
It's like, you're pale.
Yeah, no, it looks sad.
I want the bright colors.
Yeah, the kids would say ick. It gives me an ick looking at that. It was like drab. It looked like sad.
But he's going to get rid of it.
Yeah,
no fun.
Right. No more fun.
Yeah.
But
I gotta savor this before they get made illegal.
Yeah, before they get rid of your limoncello La Croix. But take me back to your question again.
What do you see happening in this industry now that Trump was elected, basically?
So the reason I went to consensus is a part of it was like, okay, we're kind of waiting and seeing, what's going to happen here, and is Trump going to win? A lot of people there were like, I think RFK could win this thing. So even that was, whatever, in the summer, in May, actually. And I think that what bothered me about consensus was that if you were a hardcore developer, or if you were a business guy, that you were there, or gal, and you were trying to make some waves, you could have some like nice ancillary sidebar conversations. But for the most part, most people weren't interested in talking to you. But if you were dressed up like a zombie hippo, you got all the attention in the world.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, zombie hippos.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my point is that in any industry, to me, that is going to the most popular person there is the zombie hippo. I'm sorry.
I think the industry was stagnant because of the lack of regulatory clarity, and now that that's changing.
Yes.
Next year's consensus will have a bunch of developers.
Well, hopefully, and people that are there, right, to rather than debating if ETH or if a layer 1 or a layer 2 blockchain is going to have any value, why are you at the conference if you don't think that this stuff has value? Why are you even here? Why do we even want to hear your voice? We should be hearing, how do we make this technology work for everybody? Here's the real world use cases. Not, we're going to see in the next 18 months if this is worth anything. What the hell are we doing here, right? So that just, don't get me started. So the promoters and the people that put consensus together need to take a long look at how serious their industry is, and to train it on more serious people. Maybe lose the zombie hippo people. Sorry. I'm really sorry. But I don't care what you have to say because you're dressed like a zombie hippo. We're talking trillions of dollars here, right? We're talking people's livelihoods. We're talking people's ability to support and feed their families, companies to live and die by your technology. And you're dressed like a zombie hippo, get the hell away from me. So I get it. It's fun. You're having a good time. But this is serious. And if you want to go up against the SEC and the CFTC and the Congress and the Department of Justice, and you lead with a zombie hippo, I can tell you who's going to lose. I can tell you who's going to lose all day long. And the fact that BlackRock is making a killing off this stuff and the zombie hippos are getting their asses kicked shouldn't surprise anyone. It shouldn't surprise a single person. And so I love the enthusiasm, and I love that people think it's funny. I really do. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean to sound like a scolder, but oh boy, was I upset when I got back from Consensus. That was the worst. That was the worst money I have spent in 2024 was Consensus. And so I hope to see Consensus in 2025, which I believe is in Hong Kong. I hope to see a more serious crowd. Maybe the people in Hong Kong don't like zombie hippos, but I hope to see a more serious group of people leading. Trump and RFK have said everything that they could possibly say. We're going to fire Gary Gensler. We're going to open this thing up. We're going to have government reserves. I think RFK said 1 million. I think Trump said 4 million Bitcoin that they would want to hold in reserve.
How do you feel about governments owning Bitcoin?
I love it. I think it's great. Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. And I know why some purists are worried. But so long as we don't have a truly centrally banked digital currency, right? So long as the CBDCs don't become, I'm okay with the government having some exposure and some reliance on it, right? And then maybe start using it. And then, new coins or new types of technology can emerge from it.
Boy, that was a blend I never, ever thought would happen. If you can go back to 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and think that there would be a bill, a legitimate bill, that proposed that the U.S. would hold Bitcoin as an asset reserve.
There are states that are looking at it right now, that they could hold Bitcoin as an asset like they could a precious metal. Why wouldn't they? And when we're printing dollars like crazy, and you have BRICS countries that are, and we intentionally are trying to get away.
It was just so. I'm still getting my mind around how it was created as a outside the system, like alternative.
Yeah.
And now it's going to be blended in with the system.
Right.
Which is really like the theme of our event coming up on the 18th.
Yeah,
by the way.
Which everybody within earshot should go.
That's kind of my talk at the beginning is going to be on that very thing. Like, look, this stuff is all designed as like alternatives to what, but that's not how it tends to work. Like things get blended together.
Yeah. Things homogenize over time.
Yeah.
It's like the arc of history is long, and things start to merge together.
So how will fiat and Bitcoin coexist? It's just an interesting thought experiment.
So Larry Fink said, and as an IBIT, holder, I hope he's right, but that Bitcoin will become a $50 trillion asset. But if you think about it, that's like 4 times this, or 2 times more than our total GDP a year. Like, what does that mean for the dollar then? And I'm not a fiscal scholar or a monetary scholar for that matter, but I think at the same time, like, that sounds a little bit overhyped, but it's possible. It's possible, and I think that they will coexist, but I think eventually, right, when you start talking, interplanetary travel and humanity, in 1,000 years, does paper fiat currency make any sense based on IOUs? Like, I'm sorry, I think we're printing nearly $1 trillion a month at this point to stay on top of this, and that's just not sustainable.
Boy, and I've long had a position of it's unsustainable. It's just a matter of how it lands.
Yeah.
The airplane's coming down. It's a matter of how it lands. I didn't want to see a crash landing. I want to see a nice, smooth descent.
Right.
That's not the energy in the air now, at least in the crypto world now.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of my more left-leaning friends and stuff are thinking, okay, we are going to crash because they don't like Trump.
Right.
But I don't know. Is it your general vibe, kind of in your community and in your mind, where no, we can turn this ship around.
Oh yeah,
we can do this.
Oh, I'm very bullish. I am so bullish.
The debt is insane.
Yeah.
And the porous border has allowed a lot of people that we don't have the resources to care for. But in your opinion, are you optimistic?
I mean, for crypto or for in general?
Both.
Well, I mean, for the country, I mean, this is and I don't think I can say this. I don't know if I can overstate it or understate it. This is a Spartans at Thermopylae moment, like culturally. What happened on Tuesday, I think saved the country. And it doesn't mean that there won't be a Democratic president and Senate in the future. Mm-hmm. Democrats aren't going anywhere. They're not going to, they're not going to change their minds. That isn't the point. But an argument got settled, and there's a rule, and I hope that if there's a Democrat listening, or a person that bought the bullshit lie that Trump is a Nazi and a fascist, there's a rule in like Republican political communications. You never go full Hitler. Never go full Hitler. Because no matter how bad you want him to be Hitler, he's not going to kill 6 million Jews. He's not going to kill 7 million gypsies. He's not going to be responsible for the death of 140 million more in battles all across the world. So don't call people Hitler. Never go there. And the fact, when I saw that they went full Hitler, I was like, oh, this is over. There's no way they can win on full Hitler. Because again, everybody knows he's not Hitler because he's been president. I've known who Donald Trump was since I was like 3 years old. Everybody loved him until 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, not everybody, but most people loved him until 10 years ago. Like, this guy's not Hitler. Mm-hmm. So
we saved the country from the people that were throwing those sorts of stones.
Yes. That were picking winners and losers.
Yeah.
And that you could only speak if they agreed with you. That is not I have said this, that in 2008 the social compact was broken. Barack Obama broke the social compact of the country, and that it became possible to cancel people, and that businesses and banks and governments and individuals could cancel someone for speech that they didn't like. And when one of theirs would get impacted, right? When somebody, they don't get canceled, maybe they lose their job.
Why do you blame Obama for that?
Because that's when this all started, right? And that was like sort of his like social premise, right? That we were going to have this sort of post-racial period, but it wasn't post-racial. It was that became more of an issue, right? And I'm not saying that we don't need to, heal wounds.
I'm not sure he advocated for that. I don't know. I look at technology, right? It's the influence of the internet. Right,
but again, who are the people that are pushing those technology companies to put, and I think that those technology companies have woken up, right? Bezos, Zuckerberg, Musk, and so you're seeing this equilibrium start to set in, right? And so again, it's not about getting rid of Democrats. It's not about permanent Republican majorities. That's never what it's about. That's dictatorship. That's what we don't want, right? We want an equilibrium where everybody's on a playing field, that everybody can agree, that everybody can have their own opinions, and that we can move forward. And then we can argue about the policy. But we can't say, oh, well, these people are Nazis.
Sure.
Right? Because I've been asked my entire life, well, if you could kill Hitler, would you have done it? Right? It almost feels like a thought experiment, right? In real life. Like, there was always, every philosophy professor, someone else, like, well, would you kill Hitler if you could? And now you're saying, oh, well, Hitler's right there.
Right. Well, obviously it's super dangerous.
Yeah. That's, like, oh, why are people shooting at him?
No doubt about it.
Right. And so that, from that perspective, I am elated that we can start to argue about policy again. And it's not about immutable qualities that nobody can do anything about.
Okay.
And we can all love each other and treat each other as Americans. That's the only thing that's the most excited that I am about this. Not that there's Republican Senate or House or president.
Yeah.
Hopefully that fight will change. That's my hope. And then for crypto, I think you're going to see the fear leave. You're going to see people looking for ways to adopt. You're going to see people find excuses, right, to innovate and find excuses to take risks.
Has there been enough time? It's only been for, I don't know when this podcast will be released exactly, but during this recording session, and I'm still wearing the same shirt I was when I voted.
Right.
This is only 2 days. It's less than 2 days. It's less than 48 hours after the election results. So what have your last two, has there just been a flurry of activity, calls, emails? Have you taken the temperature of the industry through the lens of your work to see like, wow, people are really starting to just get excited and do a ton of work now, or is it too soon to tell?
Yeah, no, I think it's a little too soon to tell, but I think there's camps, right? There's like the pro-Trump camp that's going to be really, really excited about in the the crypto space. That's really excited. That's looking like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get the SEC off our back. We're gonna put like a FIT21, again, to my point. Good regulation makes good markets. FIT21 is a market, is a market structure bill, right? So crypto advocates are calling for a market structure bill, and because it can create guardrails and it can tell the government what it can't do, and it can tell innovators what it can, and so I'm really confident that you're going to see a market structure bill get through. I'm really confident about that, and so the smart players aren't going to go like. And I appreciate the questions and the thinking, but like the time for like philosophical questions about like, should there be a government? That's over. The conversation now shifts to, okay, well, this is what the government is potentially going to do. And there's some really scary AI bills that are coming around at specific state levels because the state thinks the federal government's going to unleash these tech companies on us, and like they did during COVID, let's say, right? That's where a lot of states came down. And so you're seeing states, Republican states especially, come with some really kind of scary AI regulatory bills.
Yeah.
Very non-Republican, right? Yeah. But they think that they're sticking it to Google. They think they're sticking it to Facebook because they don't want the government. And then if you dare try to talk to them about digital assets, well, I don't like CBDCs, right? They all know what CBDCs are, right? So we've got a lot of educating to do at the state level. So the pro-business camp should be elated. State legislators, governors, they've got a lot of educating that they need. And there's great organizations. Satoshi Action Fund is the best, in my opinion. And educating legislators and doing smart policy reforms. That's another, sort of audience. And I think, like I said, while I appreciate the zombie hippos, the crypto bro needs to grow up. Right, move out of mommy's basement, act like a man, and stop dressing up and looking like a fool, and take this seriously. You are trying to transform the international monetary system. That wars have been fought and won and lost over. Respect the people that came before you, and respect the things that you're doing, and grow the hell up. That's what I would tell the industry. So there's a lot of really smart, great people. We should follow their lead. There's a lot of really great, innovative people that we should be pumping up, not the guy dressed like a horse.
I think with a crypto-friendly government, you might see more of that interaction.
100%. And that's
whereas before it was like the rebels.
Right.
And now it's like a unity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll see what that looks like, because some of those things are such contradictions.
They are.
Bitcoin versus fiat, the most glaring. But anyway, this is great. Thanks so much, man, for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, dude. It's good to see you.
Yeah, there's just so much to look at as far as the last 2 days, and so having someone here from your position, and just to learn about what you do and what that lobbying world is like a little bit, has really been great.
No, thanks. Well, you're doing a great job. Thanks for having me on.
All right, man. See ya.
Good to see you, bud.